The thing, though, about being in the situation you were in, and as you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a marriage. It can just be a relationship, in your relationship. But it's those, the feelings and the reality of that sometimes creeps into a relationship or a marriage. And you have to learn how to cope.
Absolutely.
And there are some incredible things that we have to actually put our minds to coping with. And it's not an easy path. And it's something that takes work.
It does. And, something that I think we need to know is that if we've decided to take a particular route, we don't have to stick to that route. We can actually stop, review the situation, get to know what is the new set of parameters we're working with, reframe it, and then respond differently. And I think that probably the most apt example of this in our situation, because living with Rob and his chronic disease was very much like climbing down a flight of stairs. His health would be stable, and we would be coping very well with the dialysis, with the operation or the infection or whatever he had just got over, and everything would be working, and then suddenly there would be another operation or a seizure, and it was like just climbing down the stair and then having to stabilize again. And at one point he had a seizure, and as a result of osteoporosis, it cracked his spine. And the only way we could get out and do anything was if he would use a wheelchair. We did go for a few weeks, literally running from bench to bench in a shopping center. It wasn't very productive. And Rob was so open to if we need to use a wheelchair, then let's get a wheelchair. And then we can get out and carry on living. And we were working in the disability field at that time, and I was just so aware of the number of people who, for instance, refused to use a wheelchair because of pride or because of, and understandably, not wanting to admit that they had reached a particular point with body function or ability. And that closed off, that choice resulted, I would imagine, in less opportunity to get out to smell the roses. Which we were able to do because we were prepared to adapt at each level.
By the sounds of it, that you lived life to the absolute full, to the best of both of your abilities at that point.
We really did. And I have to say, living with death on our shoulder, knowing Rob only had a year to live, was very challenging, but I think it was the best gift we were given because you don't have time to waste. You've got to make the most of now and just enjoy it because we never knew if we would wake up together tomorrow morning. And, we seem to think that it's only applies to somebody where there's chronic illness, but it actually applies to all of us. In the 17 years that Rob was alive, after he was not supposed to be according to his prognosis, of 16, 17, 18 people, friends of ours who were all destined to outlive him, actually passed away. So it's very true that we actually all have a chronic illness or a terminal disease, which is called life.
They always say, nothing is sure except death and taxes. And, as you say, you at least had the gift of knowing that you had the time and you made the most of the time
Absolutely.
that you had. And one of the things I actually smiled to myself, you said one of the most important aspects of your donkey rule, the no if-onlys, was you never go to bed angry with one another. And you said sometimes it was very difficult. It led to some very late nights. That was very funny.
Well, when you're righteous and you know that you're right and he's wrong, and you're not going to apologize because he's being ridiculous, and he's lying there thinking the same thing about you, and both of us knew. I mean, for me, the biggest thing was I just never wanted to wake up in the morning and say, if only I'd kissed him goodnight last night, and for the rest of my life live with, I should have just said I'm sorry. And that doesn't mean one's got to become submissive or lose yourself. You've got to maintain who you are. But there were times we had to agree to disagree. But at least when we fell asleep, we were lying in each other's arms and we had agreed. And if it was that important an issue, we could pick it up in the morning. And most times by the morning, it actually wasn't such an issue. So it was a way of not allowing guilt, resentment, anger to come in and rob us of our time, which we didn't have. And nobody really has, because we don't want to live with those emotions, if at all we can help it.
And sort of following on that, almost one thing to the other, was you always say talk to each other, talk with each other.
Absolutely.
There's so much to talk about. Don't keep it inside, and listen. That's the other thing. Listen. Don't just talk. I know we women, as we always like to just talk, but there is a time for us to listen as well.
Absolutely. And to hear where the other person's coming from. And sometimes it's really hard because it appears like criticism, but it's how the person's feeling. And if you can grasp how the person is feeling, and they've just had the ability just to express it, one's so much closer or further down the path to being able to deal with whatever the issue is. And there are times you need a third party. I mean, there were times after Robert being incredibly ill, and he did go into a depression just because he lost his identity. Everything was just wrong. And we saw a psychologist for about 3 months, and we realized we were starting to talk different languages. And with her mediation, we suddenly were taught amazing tools that held us in good stead for the rest of our married life. So I really think everybody needs to just be open to seeing what's going on and taking steps that's going to empower both parties to be as honest and as open as possible, and to trust one another.
Now, you are out there, as I said earlier, sharing this knowledge with the likes of us who possibly haven't quite evolved to your point yet and need somebody like you just to explain what we should be doing. And you've got this presentation called Bring Out the Brilliance of Your Relationships. And you're doing one in Johannesburg, I think it's on Friday.
That's correct, Friday morning in Ferndale.
That's at 305 Long Avenue in Ferndale. And people are there still places available, Julie, if people want to come along?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the best way to book, there's an email address, filmer@infodor.com, or your website, juliefilmer.com.
Yes, either route, people will get hold of me and we can take it from there.
And I think at this sort of time of the year, when we're sort of coming out of winter, we need a fresh look. Summer's coming, everything is sort of sparkling and bright and new, and we can do the same with our relationships. And as you said, bring out the brilliance of your relationship, and hopefully you'll change the thought patterns of a number of people who will hopefully come along to hear you speak on Friday morning.
I hope so. Thank you very much.
What time is it on Friday, Julie?
People can come through at about 8:30.
And it's for the morning in time?
And it's for the morning, 8:30 to 10:30.
Oh, so it's just part of the morning.
It's a networking breakfast, just very easy. I'll give the presentation and people can interact, ask questions, have a light breakfast. It'll just be a fun morning.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, Julie, thank you so much for joining us on the show this evening. Hopefully we all have something now to think about, and I hope not too many people are going to have a very late night tonight, because they'll hopefully sort whatever their problems are out early so they can go and have a good night's sleep. So if you don't, you're going to have to stay up late.
Absolutely.
Julie, thanks so much for joining us.
And thank you for the opportunity.
It's a pleasure. Good night to you.
Bye.
Author and professional speaker Julie Filmer was talking to us there about coping with chronic illness within a marriage, or generally just coping with marriage. And if you'd like to find out more about Julie, or to find out about going off to listen to her on Friday morning in Johannesburg with her presentation called Bring Out the Brilliance of Your Relationship, you can take a look at the website. It's www.juliefilmer.com.